Okay, this is a quick additional demonstration of dynamic blocks, specifically in this case for doing the spot elevation blocks for our current track 1 assignment, I believe. So I apologize, track 2. What we're going to do is we're going to basically make a spot elevation that is going to serve as the base point of the block, and we're going to have two text attributes, one being top of wall, one being bottom of wall, and a line in between the two. So if there is a situation where there's a spot elevation that just has top wall or just is a point, we can fill in the information that is just for that, and at the same time leave the bottom of wall blank. Therefore we'll cover both bases, top of wall, bottom wall, and a standard spot elevation. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to give myself a point to use for spot elevation. And what I'm doing here is I'm actually using the rotate command. And within the rotate command, before I actually rotate it, you'll notice there's an option for copy. So I'm going to hit C, rotate 90. So what that does is it gives me an actual copy and the original rotation. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have two attributes. And you can type in ATT, or under block, define attributes. So the one thing to note, since this is going to be a dynamic block that is going to have a move value in it, we're going to leave this position for the attribute set as locked. Otherwise you can move the attributes individually and they won't move along with the action that we set. So for tag, I'm going to call this top wall, enter the top of wall elevation, and I'll do xx, and text height, just going to make this a little exaggerated at this point. Let me set that to white, or I'm sorry, to 1. Justification left, textile standard, rotation 0. I say OK, and I'll locate this right here, and I'm going to repeat that command back into attribute, call this bottom wall, enter bottom wall elevation, default BW xx.xx, left standard 1. Actually, I apologize, this one I'm going to set this to top left, just to make sure we get it positioned correctly. And you'll notice that even though the text doesn't look correct when I'm positioning this, I am actually clicking at the top left point, and then it'll drop my attribute down below. Last thing I need is just a line in between the two, and I'm just going to eyeball this and stretch that out. So let me move this a little bit closer. And now I'm going to make all of this into a block. So I'm going to go to create. Name is going to be spot. Base point I'm going to pick as the center of the cross that I made. Select my objects. Hit enter. And I'm going to say OK. It's asking me for the first instance of that, what the values are. And I'm just going to go ahead and delete this. And just to show that the block is created, I'm going to go to Insert, choose Spot, choose a point, bottom wall elevation, so we'll do BW is, let's say, 99.25, top of wall TW is 99.75, so this would be a 6-inch wall. So what we need to do now is we want this so that we can move the top of the top attribute, the bottom attribute, and the line all around together. And then I'm actually going to make an additional dynamic piece to allow me to stretch this line back and forth. As you can see, it's extended quite a bit longer than I need it to be. So what I'm going to do is highlight the block, right click, go to block editor, and let me just pan over here a little bit so we can see what we got. Alright, so I have my base point on my block and my objects. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a point parameter, which is what we're going to use anytime we have a move. And this point location is where I want the grip to be, where I'm going to move just these objects. So I'm going to click this end point of the line. And this second point I'm picking is strictly for the description location. The only time I'll see this is in the block editor. So I have my parameter. Now I need to apply an action to that. So I'm going to apply move. It's asking me what parameter. I'm going to do the one that I just selected. And it says select objects. I'm going to select all three, the top attribute, bottom attribute, and the line. Hit enter, and you'll notice I get this little move indication right here associated with this parameter. So just to show that, I'm going to close that, save changes. So now I have a block that I can move the labels wherever I need to. But you'll notice the insertion point stays the same. You'll notice in the example on the project, the angle line is here. I'm not going to go over that right now because it involves quite a few steps, which can get a little bit confusing. Because effectively that line has to be able to rotate and stretch, which makes it a little difficult to deal with. So now I'm going to go back into the block to edit it so that I can adjust a stretch value for this line. So I'm going to right click, go back to block editor, and go back to my parameters. This one's going to be a linear parameter since this is a horizontal line. So what I'm going to do is choose linear. Start point is going to be the end point of the line. End point is going to be this end point of the line. Just going to pull this up similar to as I would for a dimension. Action. It's going to be stretch. Select my parameter. Now, this is the one piece that's very important to pay attention to whenever we're specifying the, I'm sorry, first thing is the parameter point. I apologize. So we're going to put this at the end. But the selection piece is very important with a stretch, because what we need to do is we're going to use a crossing window, so I have to click on the right and then drag back to the left. But we need this to stretch around the point, which is this point, of the object and touch the object we wanted it to. So if we had two lines, this dashed box that you see would need to touch all of the points that are going to get modified. If I made this around the entire length, it would be trying to stretch both the start point and end point, so effectively there would be no change. So again, I just want to have this surround the point that I'm modifying. So I click here, select objects, this line is the object, and I'm done. You'll notice I have this little stretch indication here. So I'm going to close the block editor, yes to save changes. So now I have a block, you'll notice that I have the ability to move attributes and stretch my line. Now it appears my stretch value is floating up here, so I'm actually going to edit my block, and I'm going to move my stretch point down to the line. Close the block editor, save the changes. Insert my block. And I'm just going to accept the default values for these just for the sake of demonstration. Click on this, and now I can stretch my line and move my attributes. Now what I did overlook, you'll notice that this is not moving with the block. What I needed to do is, since this stretch was created after the move, I need this stretch to also move with the move parameter that I made. So I'm going to block editor, and I'm going to come over here and select move, right click, and I'm going to modify the selection set to include my stretch parameter. So now save the changes. I'm going to ahead and delete this. Insert the next one. So I can move. Let me turn off my O snaps. You'll notice now they are tied together. So it's important to notice that parameters need to move along with the objects anytime you're having associated changes. So that is our spot elevation top of wall, bottom wall with attributes and dynamic stretch and move.